find them. Suddenly, everyone wanted to talk to me, it seemed, and not about my poetry. It was my dyslexia they were most interested in. The first night after hearing the good news, I finally gave up trying to sleep and came downstairs to find my wife, Monica, sitting at the dining room table, looking equally overwhelmed and bewildered. I was 63 years old and had enjoyed a fair share of luck with grants, awards, and publications, though never before had anything on this scale happened to me. When she asked me what I thought this would mean to our lives, I was unable to formulate enough clear thought to articulate even the most basic hint of what I was feeling. We live on what our school, the writer's studio, provides. We live simply. My wife is a gifted sculptor, and no one becomes a sculptor or poet because they're terribly concerned about money. We own a modest, though comfortable house in East Hampton, which was purchased during a previous recession and added onto as our family grew. In other words, we live the not uncommon lives of working artists who are lucky enough to maintain a lifestyle sufficient to our needs. I should add that I've always thought of myself as blessed. I love what I do, writing poetry, and I equally love the opportunity of teaching the accomplished, hard-working, and deserving people who attend my school. And though I often hear myself complaining about being exhausted, and sometimes retell a joke about how my accountant and I finally reached a compromise about my age of retirement, he suggesting 10 years after my death and my insisting on only 5, I always knew that I had the life I wanted and wouldn't change places with anyone. So it's little wonder that my wife and I were staring at each other across a table in the middle of a spring night, made anxious by the prospects of possible change. How would things change? More readings, I assumed, knowing that even 1 or 2 would amount to more than what I was presently giving. My next collection would most certainly be published now. It hadn't always been a certainty, given the sales of my earlier collections. And my work would most likely be better known, for a while at least. All good things, certainly. But then why wasn't I feeling overjoyed? At first, I was too busy to even try and understand the true meaning of what was happening to me. I've always managed to suffer my rewards with a style of bold incredulity and surprised humility. But now, everything seemed different. People expected me to be happy. They expected me to behave in a manner appropriate to the recognition and honor I was being given. They clearly didn't want to hear any complaints or anecdotes about personal conflicts. It wasn't until the following spring, when I gave my talk at the Churchill School, that I began to understand that what I was really feeling during this time was more complicated than a neurotically delayed reaction to good news, that it was something far more personal and Byzantine. I was suffering the mysterious, perplexing, and previously unacknowledged manner in which I received and absorbed all information of any import. I was suffering, to a noticeable degree, by the very manner in which my mind received and then attempted to process information. I was becoming conscious of the convoluted way my mind worked. After giving my 10-minute talk at Churchill, I was asked to stand on stage in a receiving line for the graduating students. I stood beside the officials of the school, last in line, waiting for this part of the ceremony to begin and be over with. I felt awkward and anxious. I didn't know these students, had never done anything helpful for them, certainly not in the way their teachers and administrators had. I'd just spoken a few personal words about how I had been affected by my dyslexia, remembering what it felt like to not know why I performed so poorly in school and be held back in 3rd grade and asked to leave the school. I was never even officially diagnosed, and wasn't official as they were. I looked down at the rows of their bright, shining faces, wishing I'd never agreed to speak to them. Having known what they were struggling with, I imagined they'd suffered more, because they were at a school for learning disabled students. There was nothing I said that they didn't already know. And now they would have to smile at me and shake my hand. Now they would have to participate in the charade of acknowledging our bond. Instead of feeling honored, I felt ashamed. It was a warm June day, and I stood there.